I often hear from leaders that many AI initiatives never make it past the pilot phase and are left wondering, where did we go wrong? Today I'm speaking with someone who's helping organisations across EMEA move beyond pilots and into real-world AI deployment. Stuart McMeechan leads AI Deployment Engineering for OpenAI in the region. If you're leading a data or AI function or thinking serious about how to scale capability, build the right team and navigate the reality of modern AI adoption, this conversation is packed with practical lessons for anyone leading AI, data, technology or transformation. You'll leave with ideas you can apply immediately. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit subscribe, whether you're listening or watching on YouTube, so you stay up to date with insights from the people sharing the future of data, analytics and AI. Stuart, welcome to our class act. Let's start with your own journey. You've worked across consultancy, public sector, supply chain. What first propelled you into the world of AI?
I've always worked in the kind of tech space. I started my career in software development in financial services, and that was around the time of the financial crisis around 2008-ish. So I did a couple of years in that kind of field, and then pretty much since then I spent most of my career in consulting, and it was all very much kind of data heavy projects we were helping our customers with in my consulting career. Initially analytics, data science heavy type projects where customers had big kind of business questions and we would have to go in and capture a load of data, run a bunch of analysis, present some findings. And then the last kind of 8-9 years of my career, I've been a bit more in terms of like implementation. So where a customer needs to access and analyze data like at scale in areas like financial crime or supply chain. And we would go in and plug in a system that they could use as part of their day-to-day job and helping them to do their area of the business a lot better. So kind of throughout all of that, the more traditional types of AI like machine learning, etc., was very much baked into all of that. But I would say the more kind of Gen AI side of AI, obviously as it's ramped up over the last 2-3 years, I think I got my first kind of flavor of ChatGPT. I was in my last role, and I think we were one of the first kind of big customers for OpenAI in terms of ChatGPT Enterprise. So I was using it as part of my day-to-day job fairly early. That was the first like glimpse of Gen AI in action. And an example from our side was we would do a lot of kind of reverse engineering of customer systems and understanding data and all of that. And that would typically involve doing a lot of digging around experimentation, etc., reading documentation in some cases. And ChatGPT Enterprise, even in the very early days, was able to do a lot of that already and tell you the answer. And I think for me, that was the first glimpse that knowledge work was going to change. And this was an area that made sense to go all in on.
Excellent. Then an opportunity obviously come up for you to join OpenAI. Has that been just over a year now?
Yeah, pushing like a year and a half. I think it's gone quickly, yeah.
I can remember seeing an update. It was like a year. That felt as if it was like 2 minutes ago. Time just really is. Before we really get started with the podcast as well, can you tell us what the AI Deployment Engineering team does at OpenAI?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a customer-facing team. We have a team of like leading AI architects and engineers, and we have 2 main objectives. One, we help our customers to build solutions on top of our models. So this could be a bank trying to improve their customer support function so they can get back to customer queries in a better way, or they can give more insight to their customers about their spend. So building that type of solution with our LLM models that we make available to the market through our API, or it could be a company trying to automate part of their back office function like document processor or something. So we're essentially there to help our customers get from their initial idea and their use case through to a production deployment, basically. So it's something actually running in production. And what that actually involves is everything from high-level kind of architecture advisory. So advising them what's the target design, how is this going to work? If it's like an agentic solution, how do you break down the different kind of agents and how is that going to be controlled and what will tool calling look like, things like that. So it's a bit around design. There's a bit around like we do a lot of work around evaluations. So helping your customers understand how are you going to measure this? How are you going to know when it's ready for production? How are you going to measure it when it's in production? So a lot around evals. And then we essentially advise the customer's engineering team as they build a solution. So helping to unblock them. And as we get new models come out, we'll advise on whether they should change direction or not. And then we help them with things like optimization when it's in production. So how do you improve latency and all these things that become super important when a solution in production. So that's our core job.
Yeah.
We also have a side objective where we basically gather intelligence from the market to see like what's working well, where our models are still struggling in areas, so very like specific areas and specific industries, what's difficult in regards to deploying our models into production, and then feeding that intel back to our product and research team so they can improve models through the post-training process, but also just from a general like platform perspective. So like security, compliance, all the things that are important to our customers, feeding that intel back to our product to improve the product and make things better, easier to deploy in the future.
Oh, brilliant. To get straight into this then, the reality is many organisations talk about AI, but very few scale it. From where you sit at OpenAI, what's separating the organisations that are scaling AI from those that are still stuck in experimentation?
Yeah, so from our perspective, and we do this as our job, right? So every customer we work with is deploying AI to production. So from our perspective, we're seeing organizations scale AI like a lot across the globe. So we globally track how many solutions that we've helped a customer get into production, and the numbers are the big number, and it's going up very quickly.
Yeah.
Within OpenAI, we group our customers into three buckets. So one into three kind of segments. So we have startups, and as you'd expect, startups are moving the quickest, and the biggest startups right now are all powered by AI. So if you think about the kind of lovables of this world who are helping customers to build websites and software, the kind of Harveys, Lagoras, and the legal tech side, there's lots of them, right? And they're all built on AI. So they all have AI running in production like at scale, and they very quickly. The other segment we focus on is what we call digital natives, which is like it's one up from startups in terms of maturity. So they've been around a bit longer, but they've maybe only been around for 10 years, so they don't have the legacy issues and systems, and their headcount is in the hundreds of thousands. So they're moving pretty quickly as well. Most of them will have pretty mature AI capability. They've got some good things in production, and often the work we do with digital natives is on the more complex side. So like, how do we, pushing the boundaries, basically, how do we make this solution available to more people and get the latency down to 10 milliseconds or whatever? It's fairly mature, but they've got AI in production at scale. And then large enterprises, which is the third segment we focus on, probably where I spend most of my time just now. These are probably the furthest behind, right? Because they've got the big organization, lots of people, they've got different systems and processes in different countries. It's harder to build things because there's more processes to get through. And in some cases, they're working in regulated environments as well. So there's a lot more challenges. And so the trend we faced last year was very much around like piloting and experimenting, seeing what's working, maybe testing the boundaries of what they can build. And for the large enterprises that really got going with that last year and make good progress, this year is really around like scaling up to the other kind of use cases they've got across the enterprise, our kind of top clients. And we've got some amazing customers like BBVA, the bank based in Madrid. They started very early. They've been rolling out ChatGPT Enterprise to like 120,000 of their employees. And we've been, like my team and the SDE team have been working with them on 4 or 5 like really big use cases where they're building something custom that's going to really change them into an AI native bank. And customers like that really got a head start last year. So they kind of went in, they took some risks and worked on earlier models. Yeah. And this year they're in a really good position because they're then thinking about, like, they've done the first 5, 6 big use cases. They've got the learnings, and now they're thinking about how they scale that up to the next 200-300 cases across the bank. So I think the general theme for large enterprises is less about like deciding if an organization is going to do AI, and the conversations are generally about like, how do we accelerate, how do we scale up, how do we pick the best use cases to focus on next? It tends to be more of those types of conversations.
No, it's good to hear. It's good to hear it's really moving along as well. I've still been in some like leadership meetings and like round tables and stuff where it's that people are still talking about like someone's not logged into a license for 5 weeks and how do we get them to do that. So I love conversations like this where you really hear just a lot's moving in the market. And from your perspective, what are the biggest myths companies still believe when they start exploring AI deployment?
I think one would be that it can be deployed like a typical technology project.
Yeah.
So we've seen some kind of companies in the market who I found out almost tried to deploy an AI solution like they would with a traditional piece of software, a big design phase where nothing's being built, and there's lots of like paper and architecture diagrams and things like that. Then there's like big sign-offs around security and architecture. then there's like a massive build phase, right? And with AI, with Gen AI specifically, it doesn't quite work, right? Because for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of this is new, right? A lot of what we're doing is new with Gen AI. So there's a lot of experimentation that's required. And we encourage our customers to experiment early. So don't spend a long time like design, get some dummy data, run some tests, understand like how good is this, is what we're trying to set out. If we just deploy like some of our latest models like 5.5, which is really good at a lot of like a broad range of things, just like out of the box, just try what you're trying to do with 5.5 on some data and see how it works. And that gives you an indication pretty quickly of whether you're onto something and it's going to be feasible. It's a lot more like iterative. You need to try things out, get a feel for if it's going to work, then start thinking about your evals and getting those in place so you can start measuring and then scaling up from there to some sort of solution. I also think, obviously like tools like Codex, I don't know if you've managed to play around with the Codex app. Yeah, you should try it if not. But capabilities like this are, as you'll know, have been really speeding up the process of basically writing code and building software. So we're seeing this like crazy flywheel just now where like our team will be working with the customer around something like a back office automation project or improving customer support or improving claims processing for an insurance company. And the AI models will be there to enable that. But then you've got tools like Codex, which means that you can build a solution like super quickly. So a lot of the customers we work with, within 2 weeks or something, we've got something running that they can see and feel. And we encourage our customers to do that part themselves, but it can be done using Codex and it can get them to a very rough kind of version 1 within weeks rather than months.
Brilliant. Because there is still a lot of maybe people still getting stuck at the proof of concept stage as well. What do you see as the biggest blockers moving from pilot to production?
Yeah, I think just a couple of examples. I would say one is picking the right use case to work on. And I'd say where we are in the market, especially in the larger enterprise type side of the market, a lot of enterprises are doing this for the first time, right? They're deploying Gen AI into production for the first time. And one, you should pick a big use case or 2 or 3 big use cases. So is something going to move the dial on revenue? Is this something that's going to mean we can service our customers better and will increase our revenue? Is this something that's going to reduce costs or reduce the process? So again, we can maybe, like a banking example would be getting decisions around products and the risk process and things. Can you do that in a shorter period so you can get better outcomes for your customers? So as picking a big use case is important for a couple of reasons. One, you kind of need to have pretty senior buy-in and leadership for these projects in this kind of early stages of Gen AI. So if it's a strategic kind of priority for the customer, then you would expect the C-suite to be involved. And that's important because for large enterprises particularly, they're going to have to change some processes. They're going to have to unblock things. They're going to have to shuffle around people. So we want the kind of business people involved in the kind of build process as well as technical. There's lots of things that's kind of happening for the first time. And I'd say for a lot of our customers, we've encouraged them to kind of unblock things in processes when they happen. So again, rather than following the kind of traditional build process, which often has lots of gates and lots of approvals and things like that, having to reshuffle that to suit and cater for the more iterative type development, pick the right use cases is super important, have the senior buy-in, super important. And then I'd say probably third example would be coming back to the eval topic. We have to have a clear view on how we're going to measure this. So when it comes to this big decision about whether we put this solution into production, there's a thing on screen which says we're good to go, because if it's something straightforward like a customer chatbot on your website or something, it might be like a score around does the responses fit to our brands and qualifying that, what percentage of those questions get answered well by the bot. The things like this we look at on the dashboard together with our customers before they go to production. But if you're sitting ready to go to production and you don't have any of that, it's going to be a very difficult decision.
No, brilliant. Thanks very much. And if you are, as you will do, advising board or C-suite today about launching a serious AI initiative, what are the main questions they need to be asking before they start?
I think I've covered some of it already. So is this the right use case? I think why are we doing this is an important question. So again, it comes back to the use cases, and a lot of our quickest moving customers, you can go and speak to a member of the C-suite, obviously the head of AI, but others as well. And in some cases, the chairman or chairperson. and they will tell you what their top 5 use cases are for AI and why it's important to them. And in some industries that will include them saying that if we don't get these right, we might not be competitive in the market in a year's time. So our best customers have a real grasp on that picture. And it's different per sector, right? How fast each are moving and how disruptive AI can be. But having a clear picture of like why they're doing it is super important. And if they don't have that, then it's a fairly kind of clear indicator that they maybe haven't seen where this is going, and therefore all the problems you have to unblock in your first run at Gen AI into production is going to be very hard, and it will probably take a while.
I'm guessing a big part of your job is maybe sitting down with these kind of C-suite and leadership teams and actually talking to them about the case studies and advising if it's good or bad, or maybe even at times getting in and presenting case studies where they could get value from that as well. Quite an exciting part of the job.
Yeah, and I think as every month we see new use cases, and obviously we work as part of, although I look after our Europe team, we're part of obviously a global team, and there's just so many use cases coming up that in different industries that you see results, and therefore we are flipping to be more turning up to a customer like an insurance company or a health company and saying, but here's 3 things we kind of need to be doing now because we've seen it work in others. And then there's the big picture. And kind of beyond the next 2-3 years, it becomes a bit of a harder conversation because it's hard. It's a bit more like, where do we think those are going? And it becomes a bit more different depending on the personalities and the companies in the sectors. But certainly the next 1 to 3-ish years, there's becoming a fairly clear picture of the use cases that different sectors should be moving on.
No, brilliant. A lot of different cross-sector initiatives and cases, I can imagine, as well. But one thing, we spoke about this quite a lot at the Edinburgh event when you were on the panel, but one thing I do find fascinating right now is that AI success seems to be less about the technology itself and more about the people, leadership and organisational readiness. From your perspective, what separates organisations that are genuinely ready for AI adoption from those simply experimenting because they feel pressure to?
Enterprise readiness is a big blocker, right, to rolling out AI. And I think rather than, I think our models I've got to the point where you can do like most things with the models pretty well. And we'll maybe touch on this later, but our kind of cadence for releasing new models has reduced from 15 months to 6 weeks. So pretty much every 6 weeks, there's new models coming out that are even better. So for big enterprises, it's not really about waiting for like new technology. Like you said, it's more about like, how do we actually make this happen? There's a few things. I mean, the implementations we work on is two different like sides of an AI implementation for what we see. And one is the kind of bottoms up, get AI in everyone's hands. And for us, this would be like rolling out ChatGPT Enterprise and Codex. And this is just like getting it available to everyone. So they come in the morning to their job and they've got a tool that's there to accelerate after emails, do research, build slide decks, things like that. And we'll maybe touch on this later, but like Codex is another part of that, which is becoming even more powerful and continue even more. But it's very much around like helping people day to day. And for that, it's all around like enablement. So first of all, like actually getting it in people's hands and getting it connected to the right data sources so that they can interact with their documents and emails and things like that. And we've seen that it becomes a bit of a leadership thing, like each different function in a business. So like a finance function, sales, etc. There needs to be good leadership, and we often call them like wizards in each of those functions to help figure out like what are they finding most impactful in this kind of like day-to-day AI use cases. So someone in each of those teams will figure something out, whereas like, I used to spend like a day reading these contracts and like summarizing them in a spreadsheet, what the risks are. Actually, like ChatGPT Enterprise can basically just do that out of the box. So like discovering those things, getting the word out, encouraging that person, maybe rewarding that person, and figuring out how we get others in that function to think like that, and also to use some of these like patterns that have been tried and tested. So there's a lot around like finding the right people in each of those functions. And there are always people in every function who will use a tool like ChatGPT Enterprise or Codex and very quickly like figure out how it can help in their jobs. So on that side, it's all about enabling. On the like big use case side where we typically focus, which is, okay, we need to completely change how we do work in this area or service our customers, and we have to build something new to do this. That's some very different challenges. That's things like pulling the right team together. What we've seen a team building a new solution like this in a business needs to have a good mix of like business people, technical people who are willing to have had their hands dirty with AI, are willing to try new things, are willing to like change direction when inevitably like new things come out in 3 months and you have to change your design and change course. So there's a bit around like flexibility and kind of willingness to challenge processes as well is like super important in the enterprise. So if this team who's building this new AI solution gets told that actually we need to wait for 3 months to get something signed off, the kind of confidence, I guess, to raise it to super senior level and push back and say, okay, that's great. Like, why do we have to do that? And is there another way that we can work that out? Like, what's holding it up? So a lot of our customers have the pressure to get these done. So we need to work around these kind of traditional, maybe out-of-date processes to make it happen. But I would highlight, going back to my point around like including the business is like super important. One of the banks we're working with on like commercial and investment banking solutions to make like bankers more productive. So like automating creation of pitch decks, prospecting, things like that. We've got junior bankers basically on the team who are giving real-time feedback every week on like this, not like that's not worth pursuing, let's go in another direction, etc. So it's all around speed, and therefore you have to have some business involved.
Yeah, definitely. I love all the kind of large scale kind of enterprise stuff, but I do love just having conversations with people on a daily basis where it's really helping maybe some of the younger managers coming through who maybe struggling a little bit with like communication and talking to the execs within a business. And some of them are actually losing maybe bonus because they're not able to really articulate themselves right and tell the business what they're doing. And then I know they're using the chat GPT just to produce like weekly reports on their team, what they're doing, where we're getting progress, where we're not. And just those examples are amazing as well, how it's really helping individuals enhance their jobs. I've got another one of my events in Glasgow next week as well. It's just amazing, like just trying to speaking to the audience, getting marketing out and doing things where I can just run it through ChatGPT. Right, I need to let everybody know the address is coming next week. Just basic things like that. Put it in with the website for the event, and it's just producing stuff in like a second. Whereas it took me a while just to go and type out and think about and stuff.
Yeah, and it's crazy how quickly that kind of like general knowledge work has changed so much this year already. I think like in OpenAI, we often refer to this term like feel the AGI. I don't know if I mentioned that to you before, but it's like you see a model or a tool do something that you didn't think was possible. And we refer to those moments as feel the AGI. And I think in OpenAI, though, there was a lot of that around January, February this year when our Codex tooling got very good. And basically Codex is uses our underlying models like you have access to in ChatGPT, but Codex has like what we call like a harness around, a really good strong harness around it, which is like the model in the center, but the kind of tooling which lets it do tasks like use your computer, access the web, and do all kind of end-to-end type things. And around January, February, we realized it was just like unbelievable, basically building spreadsheets, building slide decks. Like our team have gone through a transformation ourselves in the last few months just because of Codex. And so things like building architecture, technical design document diagrams, it does extremely well. And then, like you said, just like day-to-day things, like when I report up to the global leader, like we have a fancy dashboard that was just like created using Codex and refreshes automatically every few days. And just like our ways of working, it really changed this year.
Definitely. I did a handover with one of my senior consultants last week, but she's an absolute genius at delivery. There's a large scale project with a consultancy, 15 people, so it's volume. So what she's produced over 3 weeks, it's a lot of candidates, a lot of paperwork, a lot of organisation, and she's doing it manually at the moment, basically. So I think as probably a business leader, I've spent a little bit of time with her because I had to, and I've really understood what she's doing, and I know for a fact 90 to 95% of this could all be automated, and it would be amazing for her job, and even it would really change the type of people I would hire into my business moving forward. I'd probably be able to bring in more graduates and trainees and really embed them in the business. Not fascinating.
And it's interesting what freeing up time is like a massive priority for a lot of our customers, and some of our customers are like large enterprises are doing things like, I don't know if you've heard about kind of code modernization, projects, which a lot of the big banks and others are often doing. And this is where you're taking an old legacy system that might have been written in COBOL or something and converting it into a more modern system to save time and make cost of maintenance and things. And these programs can take a year to 2 years, maybe even longer. Yeah. And they've got their best engineers on them. And the projects ultimately are just recreating a system to be the same, but it's built on a better foundation. Yeah. And so we found that our FD team have been doing an amazing job on some customers and have seen these projects come down about 60, 70, 80% in terms of it's done quicker. And so these organizations will free up some of their best people to do other things that they probably didn't think they would ever have time to do. That's exciting as well. And we don't really know what that will lead to.
Amazing. That is amazing. Fascinates me. And do you think organizations are underestimating the cultural change required to successfully deploy AI?
I think possibly last year. I think everyone's been on a learning journey, and we've held a lot of closed door events for customers, like C-suite, head of AI, etc. And a lot of the conversation is just around sharing stories on what's worked well, and going back to my two approaches to AI implementation on the kind of ChatGPT Codex route. It's becoming clear what's working, and it's things like running hackathons within your function, showcasing what's working well, rewarding your people. And then there's some metric monitoring as well. So per part of the business, kind of monitoring who's using tools like ChatGPT Enterprise or Codex every week versus not. And you start to see which parts of the business are starting to use them well and which aren't. So, the culture side is super important. And as we touched on earlier, I think the bigger the organization, the harder it is, just because there's more people, right? And there's more processes as well. I feel like the enterprises that have done the best from what I've seen over the last years have been where they've plucked out the people who are for the big use case builds and picking out the people who are kind of get it now. Yeah. And they've figured it out. They know things are changing. They're building quickly. They're using Codex, things like that. Making sure those people are focused on top 4 or 5 initiatives. And then everyone else will follow right over time. It's going to speed up quickly in the next year or two.
Well, definitely. And this might be quite useful for some people as well, because I know a lot of businesses are they're maybe asking, do we need an entire new AI team, or do we need to evolve the teams that we already have? Do you have a view on that? What you're maybe seeing in the market as well?
Different organizations are doing different things. And it's quite interesting. There are a few different kind of capabilities that's needed to make these things happen. And the way I've seen it work really well for some enterprises is where they break down their AI transformation into say 5 or 6 kind of work streams. So one of them might be roll out ChatGPT to everyone in the company, for example, and then they'll have success metrics around it. That there needs to be a team or a small team who are leading that. And that's all around the things we just discussed, right? Yeah. Enablement, wizards, rewards, things like that. You need a specific team around that. And then the others might be there might be one around turbocharging or software development or engineering functions using AI. And that generally doesn't need a team, right? That's more just a technical group in an enterprise anyway. So that's more about kind of leadership and picking whether you use Codex or something else and getting it in the hands of developers, and then there's some process things that those functions need to do. Then for the big build processes where we're okay, we're going to transform our customer support function using voice models, or we're going to change this back office process that's taken 6 weeks and try and get it down to 3 days. Those need specific project teams, and that will be business, we mentioned, people, AI engineers, etc. And they're generally plucked from across the business. And they will work in a kind of project sprint type team. So I think where I've seen it work really well is not create an AI function and they do everything. Yeah. It's more about clustering around these initiatives, certainly in the first year or so. And then often in those examples, you have more an R&D AI team who are really thinking big pictures in, okay, where might we be in 2 years' time? We often work with those types of teams to showcase our new models that's coming out in the next month or 2, and they can run testing and things like that. So that's the kind of structure. But I think once an enterprise has got things into production, so maybe they've wrapped up their first 3 big implementations, for example, and it's running in production, I think the way it's probably going is that there's going to be AI capabilities in each function across the business, certainly in the big enterprise. And then there'll be like some sort of centralized AI function, but their job is not necessarily to build everything. It's probably more around releasing like reusable patterns or things like a company might, you don't want an enterprise building like a document processing solution like 100 times in different parts of the enterprise. So they might scope out the different solutions and patterns that are going to be reusable across the organization and lead to charge on that. And then things like methodology, evaluation, like you said, you don't want everyone to have to figure out what an evaluation is like every single time they build something. So these kind of like repeatable patterns, methodologies, maybe the R&D is bundled into there as well. I could see that being like in a more centralized type function. I think that's where things are going, but I think it's still pretty early days.
So maybe the kind of future is embedding AI capability directly into every function over time.
I think so, yeah. And we mentioned like FDEs, etc. I kind of see a future where you probably have an FDE type person or team in every function, certainly in big functions. And these are the people who are spotting the opportunities, building quickly, prototyping, and where things are working, like getting something into production very quickly, like putting on other capabilities across the organization where needed. But like proper like transformation within each function is probably the way it's going. And I think the cool thing about things like ChatGPT Enterprise and Codex is that day-to-day like work in each of these functions, you can actually do a lot of these complex things in Codex, but the challenge then becomes like, how do you scale that up? So I think where I see things going potentially is that in a typical organization, like someone will stumble upon something within a function just using Codex, where it's like, oh, I just realized you could do this. Like you can build this report or something, like just by feeding it some data and a good prompt and things like that. And then maybe like an FDE or an AI team builds that into a solution because they realize that there's 100 other people in the function who just does that as their day-to-day job. So it's wrapping it up into an actual solution.
No, brilliant. So it feels like we're still very early in the AI journey, even with all the noise and investment happening globally. From where you sit at OpenAI, what changes do you think business leaders are still underestimating?
I think some enterprises are still underestimating how much AI could transform their business and their industry. A lot of organizations are trying their first use cases and they might be picking with things that are fairly obvious, which makes sense. This thing is taking way too long, so we need to speed it up and we can either do it using a model or we need to scale up or this sort of function, but we can be hiring 20,000 people. So we can now use models to do this. So there's some almost quick wins, even if they're strategic use cases. It's fairly obvious the use cases that can be picked. But some of our customers are like thinking beyond the next 2-3 years. And we obviously talk about this a lot internally within OpenAI. And I think this is where it starts getting a bit tricky for businesses, and it requires some crazy thinking around, if we assume that even just from an OpenAI perspective, we keep releasing models every 6 weeks, and maybe that comes down to days, who knows? In the future, and you can basically do anything. What does that mean for certain sectors, and what does that mean for us as an organization? So again, going back to something like insurance or banking or something like that, what does a bank look like in 5 years on the retail side? I don't know. My assumption is that I'll be interacting with my bank through like ChatGPT on my phone and asking it to like my system to send a payment to someone. The bank's still there, but the way we interact with it as a consumer might be completely different. I think for the enterprises who are maybe still thinking about like, how do we automate this or how do we scale this thing up? That's amazing, but like need to be thinking about the next 3, 4, 5 years. And I think that's where we see some enterprises maybe underestimate how quickly things can move. Like things are moving very quickly. And so what does that mean for us? I think is sometimes not talked about enough, I think.
I always like to ask people that if we could try and think and predict where things will be in the next 5 years, but I just don't think that question's even worthwhile now, because it's just try maybe breaking that down to 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. It's just happening so quick. Everything's really changing, and when you try to predict 5 years away, it's just, I think it's impossible at the moment.
It's crazy.
Really is.
We've had some projects, customers, even this year, where we set out to do something in January, and it was going to take maybe 6-7 months or something, and then Codex came along, and this is completely, and then our models got better. Some of the solutions, even we've been involved with our customers, and completely changed direction because of maybe they've become a lot easier to do, or it's actually you don't need to build something anymore. You can use our new agent functionality in ChatGPT because it's more powerful enough to do it. So I agree. I think it's like syncing in 3 months. Chunks makes sense. Yeah.
No, definitely. And one thing I do hear a lot when I'm speaking to people is like AI is moving faster than organizations can adapt. Do you think that's true?
In the larger enterprise side, for sure.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is, right? It's the big organizations, lots of people, everyone's busy doing their day jobs. It's right now, it's not possible for enterprises to move at the speed at which the models are coming out. But I think a couple of things, like one, we've been investing a lot in terms of like our FTEs, and we announced our DeployCo, which is our consulting arm. We work with a lot of partners, like our partner organizations, who come in and help us with, like, us and our partner and the customer working together. So there's like an increasing number of people who are helping enterprises to basically navigate this and share learnings from what we see from other customers. And then there are just like organically like more people in the market who have done a Gen AI implementation. And so like we'll see things move quicker, and also organizations have been changing the processes to cater for this like new type of development. The engineering functions are starting to use tools like Codex so they can build quicker. So we'll see this like flywheel over the next few years where some of the blockers that exist today will largely fall away, I think. And then there are some areas we're trying to tackle as OpenAI with products. As you'll know, like in a large organization, there's a big challenge around like access to systems and data. So you can build this like amazing app, but if it has to connect to four instances of Salesforce and 20 instances of this like other types of systems, which is in some other country and hosted on, it's difficult, right? You can't just do that automatically. And so we've been building some interesting technology which lets you connect and discover data from across the organization in a bit of an easier way. So there's a bit around like product, and we're like figuring out what's the biggest blockers to getting AI deployed and figuring out how we like build a product around it. But then we've also got like the people side, the FDEs, etc., to help on the ground to make things happen. So like everyone's like throwing everything at it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to cover a little bit about human, like able primarily to enhance human capability, but I think that's been a theme throughout the whole podcast. But where do you think human beings remain irreplaceable regardless of how advanced AI becomes?
I think facing roles super important. Obviously, in like obvious examples would be in like health sector. People want to speak to people, and I think like on the health side, like even just speaking to GPs, for example, I think a lot of people still want to speak to a GP. But if a GP has some sort of like real time co-pilot that's built on intelligence from every single medical case in history, that's giving them real time guidance, like that combination is super powerful. There are certain kind of obvious cases where like human touch is still like super important. I think creative sectors, I think just coming up with, in some cases, like ideas and new strategy, while we can obviously use AI to help with that, I think understanding local markets and what will work well versus what won't, I think the human touch will still be key. And ultimately, like what we've seen is there's still like lots of work to do. This is not getting rid of everyone. A lot of what we've discussed today is challenges that need to be fixed with people. Like, how do we figure this out, and how do we like connect these? There's lots of like things that need people to do. And I think as the capabilities get better and better, I think it'll be interesting to see what humans can do with them. Like you say, what does a recruiter do when actually they don't have to do any admin anymore? Or maybe even do first interviews. You don't need to do them anymore. It's just like a voice model to do them. So what does that mean? You could be speaking to more companies who you might be able to offer your services to, like things like that. We'd hope that people are spending their time on more productive things. And we've seen that ourselves, like in our team is transformed in the last few months, like you mentioned. So we get to spend more time with our customers, like going traveling around rather than sitting making diagrams and things. So I think humans are still like super key.
Brilliant.
Which is great.
Yeah, definitely. There's a new kind of job title coming in, recruitment. It's like some kind of engineering team. Everybody's talking about it, and even smaller firms like recruiters, and they're starting to look at bringing people in to build out the stack and get things moving. So it's not interesting. But finally, if we were sitting here in 2030, looking back, what do you think people will say we completely underestimated about this moment in AI?
I think probably like the speed at which things are moving. Even within OpenAI, and we're seeing kind of things play out in real time, and we see what's coming up in the next month, 2 months, 3 months. I think like I'm still often surprised and have to take a second sometimes just to be like, what, like things are moving very quickly. And so even just thinking where we might be by Christmas, I think there'll be stuff we can do that we can't do now. Our current models will seem pretty old school even by Christmas, which is crazy. I think there'll be some like amazing stories probably in like health, like drug discovery, even just like from a consumer perspective. I'm super excited about having a super assistant which can just do all my life stuff for me. And I think we're like pretty close to that. I think a lot of things like that will happen between like now and Christmas.
Yep.
And so I think if we look back in a few years' time, I think we'll probably realize that we didn't really think, we might be saying we know it's moving fast, but I don't think we'll really have grasped like what it actually means and the kind of things that we'll all be able to do and what it means for organizations, how we do our day work. So yeah, I think that's what I'd say.
Amazing. Thanks very much, Stuart. Honestly, it's been a masterclass. I could have sat and spoke to you for ages. I had loads and loads of questions I didn't even get around to asking. Conversation was flowing. It was fascinating. I really enjoyed listening to you. I can't wait to get this one out to all the viewers and people who have subscribed to the podcast and stuff. So thanks very much. And just as always, before we finish, where can people find you? Where's the easiest place if people are looking to talk to you or find out OpenAI or what you're doing?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Yeah. I'm mostly some other places like X and things, but mostly in the kind of read-only capacity. So yeah, LinkedIn's the best place. I usually do the odd post around what I'm up to and things. Yeah, happy to connect.
Amazing. Thanks very much for your time. If you found this episode useful, hit the like button, subscribe for more conversations like this, and reach out to us at MBN if you'd like to appear on the show. But thanks for listening to A Class Act, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to A Class Act. If you've enjoyed the episode, make sure to follow the show so you never miss a conversation. And if you're building a data team or making a key leadership hire, reach out to us at MBN Solution using the link in the show notes.